Natalya Coyle, Irish modern pentathlete, is with us to talk to us about her preparations. Natalya, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
I'm good, and thanks for having me on.
How are your preparations going, and what exactly are you preparing for at the moment?
Well, I'm really lucky. I'm probably one of the more fortunate people because I've already qualified for the games. So I qualified in August 2019 now. So I'm already qualified, so I don't need to worry. Because I think when a lot of people ask me about the games, maybe it's just blind faith, and I suppose it's because that's what I'm preparing for. But I'm like, they're definitely going to go ahead. Especially when Thomas Bach had come out with a plan for with or without the vaccine. So I was like, they're definitely going to go ahead, but it's actually not hosting the games that's the biggest problem, even though people might think that. It's actually getting everyone else qualified who hasn't qualified yet. So there's loads of different sports, including my own, that haven't wrapped up their qualification process yet. And that's going to be the trickiest thing, especially if they're supposed to be in like multi-city competitions. So that's the trickier one, I think.
And is yours a multi-city, so obviously you're qualified, but how many people in your event wouldn't already have qualified?
I think there's probably about 50% of the slots left, maybe, or actually, sorry, maybe less, maybe 30% of the slots left. And they're all done through ranking. So it means that you have to go to loads, you need 3 competitions, and the best of your 3 competitions, I suppose, qualifies you for the games if you're in the ranking list. So it means that there's lots of different competitions to do. So if there was no COVID right now, the competitions would start at the end of March, and then there'd be 3 World Cups, 1 in Budapest, 2 in Bulgaria, and then there's World Cup final in Seoul, and then there's World Champs in Minsk and Belarus. But going to those multi-city places isn't really looking too good, I think. So something I'll probably have to give, but my sport's not just alone on that. There's, even if you look at athletics, if people are chasing those ranking points as well, generally they go to an awful lot of different countries to try and race in different places and get points. So there is a good few sports, and I think triathlon are the same, and so are badminton. So it's going to be an interesting few months seeing how different organizations kind of navigate that new process.
So, given the fact that you've already qualified and you have a target date to be at your absolute peak for, I presume if things were normal, you would go to loads of those and there'd be no pressure on you, so you'd be able to put yourself under whatever pressure you wanted and mimic whatever the conditions are going to be like, and do them at different levels of tapering. How do you plan now to be ready to go when the event actually starts?
I think for me, I just have to keep looking. All my coaches really prepare for August. So yes, I definitely would. If there was no COVID, I would go into most of the competitions on this year, because I haven't competed in so long now, but also just kind of keep that competitive nature in me. But at the moment, I just focus towards August and hoping that I'll have a good few competitions in the middle, kind of. So I will go into them untapered and I'll just go train through them. So that'll be kind of what it is for me, because I think kind of a lot like other athletes, it's just a little bit of an unknown at the moment of where and how to peak. So for me, I just know that I'm really lucky that I have to peak in August. So we kind of just look that far in advance. But you just look down the line and you hope that, I think our World Championships in Minsk they're actually not till June. So I'm kind of hoping that that might be on. Maybe I'm being really optimistic. Don't rain on my parade. But so that's kind of where I'm looking that I'll get to go and compete anyway. So who knows? It'll all keep changing. But for me, I'm just looking to maybe get a few competitions under my belt before Tokyo goes ahead.
How are you managing to keep that competitive instinct going at the moment then? What has training been like, basically?
We've been really lucky when at the moment, because we can fence underneath the elite athletes at the moment, which is really, really good. And Sport Ireland have been fantastic in kind of facilitating that and navigating it through COVID. And luckily, we've kept up swimming and running. And for me, one of my big things that I was working on for the past year is running, because I really, really needed to improve that for the games, because all my other skills were quite good. And I just needed to keep improving my running. So luckily you can run the whole way through COVID. So that's kind of what I've been doing. And I've been working my fencing as well. But main focus for me was on running, and still is. So I've been doing an awful lot of that and trying to just, I suppose, get better in hopes for Tokyo coming down the line. So yeah, being competitive, I'm not going to lie, there's been some pretty bad weeks, when you're just thinking Tokyo's supposed to be done, 5 or 6 months now? And also just looking ahead, you'd think that there'd be a lot more certainty right now than there is. But I think I've definitely had some bad weeks when you're just thinking, like, God, like, is it ever going to end? Are we ever going to be able to do, I suppose what I'm like paid to do, be an athlete? But I think you do come out at the end. I think for me, it's like taking it one day at a time when I'm having a bad week like that, and trying to take joy in a little bit of things that I enjoy. Like, I enjoy fencing a lot. So that's for me. And I've also been in a couple of time trials and races in running. So that's kind of kept me a little bit going strong. But yeah, I am kind of hunting for a bit of a competition. That would be great. If you guys could deck out in some fencing kit, that would be good.
No chance. I'd end up like a pincushion.
That's interesting, Natalya, that you mentioned that you have this very specific event, part of your overall sport, where you're like, this is my happy place, and if I'm having a tough week, I just want to partake in a bit of fencing. Is that basically it? That if you've got a schedule for the week, and if things just aren't going your way, if you're not feeling great, you kind of rip up the schedule a little bit, and you get yourself and you start sparring. Basically, is that how you get your week back on track?
Yeah, like during the week, normally I would have 2 kind of more intense sparring sessions, and then I'd have 2 lessons. So if I'm kind of ever feeling like that, I need, I suppose, a bit of a refocus, or just, actually, it's not even a refocus. Sometimes, like with fencing, I've been doing it so long that it's kind of mindless, and I don't mean that in a negative way. It's like you kind of go into a different state. So I know all the moves so well now, and it's challenging mentally, but it also is quite relaxing for me. So I'll do a lesson, and I'll feel much better at the end of it. I think because it's such a specific technical skill, you really quite have to, in some ways, be really relaxed first, and in others really focused. So it's kind of counterintuitive. And I really do enjoy doing that. And then fencing, when I'm free playing as well, it's great. Like, we haven't had access to an awful lot of sparring partners because of COVID, but we've had a few pentathletes. So it is good, just to kind of get on the piste, you can let off a little bit of steam.
When you mentioned the running, then, that this is the particular event that you've put a lot of focus in over the last 12 months or so, is there a specific running coach that you have? How do you actually manage to take that element and get good at that one thing?
So I've been working with someone called Steve Macklin, who's an Irish, he's an Irish athletics coach, but he's actually based in Qatar now. So we worked with him up until 2016, and then had a little break, and I've been back working with him since maybe August, I think. And it's going really well. I've had a few PBs and things, but it's not even that. It's just kind of the consistency of my training has been really good. I've been able to kind of throw out really good weeks back to back for a good while now, which is really good. And I'm hoping to continue to take that on. So Steve's been great. And it's been really good, kind of someone who's worked with you for so long as well. They kind of know the ins and outs of you. And they're not just, I suppose, like that's kind of the nature of being a coach. You kind of have to get used to the athlete first. But Steve's known me for so long, so and he does Arthur's running as well, so it's kind of makes it a little bit easier, and it's great. He's a really nice person as well.
Was that also? Sorry, go ahead, Jer.
The run is about 3,200 meters. Is that right?
Yeah, 4 800s.
4 800s, and are they? How does that run actually happen? Is it all in one go? 4 800s?
Yeah. So what'll happen is you'll go off at the start, depending on how you've accumulated points throughout the day, which equate to seconds. So it's called a Hungarian start. So if you're winning, you'll go off on the gun, I suppose. And if I'm like 6 seconds behind you, or 6 points, I'll be 6 seconds behind you. So then I'll go off. And so basically it's kind of like cat and mouse. So you'll go off and you'll go shoot first, and then you'll do 800, just shoot again, 800, shoot again, 800, shoot again, and then your final 800. So you've got your shoots kind of put in at the end of the 800, and then whoever crosses the finish line first wins. So it's kind of it's a really exciting event to watch, especially you can see kind of the shake up throughout it, especially if it's really close in the top 10. It's really exciting to watch.
And it's cross country generally, is that right, or is it ever in a track?
Sometimes it can be a mix. So at Europeans, it was all track. No, there was a little bit of grass, and then sometimes it can just be grass, and then sometimes it can just be track. So it's kind of mixed. You'll never get really, you used to get a lot more like hills and things. In London, it was really hilly, and I had to do a lot of hill specific training. But now it just tends to be flatter. I think it's just the nature of keeping everyone in the same stadium. So it makes it more exciting for spectators to see.
That makes sense, but it also means that your training is a bit wild, because it's not like just a straight 800 that you have to train for. It's an 800 and then do something mentally exhausting, but not physically exhausting, and then go and do it again. So I presume you're completely frazzled at the end of it.
Yeah, you're pretty wrecked. And then also as well, it's the whole day accumulation by the end. And if it's been another majors championship, like not the Olympics, because that's a straight final, you'll have done a semi-final 2 days before. So you do be pretty wrecked by the time the finish comes. But it's just, I suppose I've just done it for so long now, I don't really think about that. But it is pretty mad when you do think about it. Like, you're kind of going as much full pelt as you can in the run without being too exhausted that you can't shoot. And then just kind of doing that the whole way through, that really fine balance.
It strikes me that if you can actually win the actual race, how do they tally the shooting with the scoring? Do they hold you back?
Oh no, it doesn't. That doesn't matter.
So
it's just time, essentially. Right. So if you've gone off first and you've crossed the line first, you win.
Right.
But if I go off 10 seconds behind you and I pass you out, then I'll win.
Okay, right. That is pretty amazing. A beautifully handicapped sport at the end to make sure that everybody watching.
It would be great if like heptathlon or decathlon was run like that. It would be much easier to understand as well. So they should do that.
Yeah, totally.
Is there a lot of scenario planning then, Natalya, when you mentioned the cat and mouse element of it, where you're like, okay, this is the time I need to hit if I'm a certain amount of time down off a prospective leader, or I'm a certain amount of time ahead?
I don't think that necessarily normally comes into it, but it will be right. There will be a few people within pentathlon you would know would be the supersonic runners, like the absolute incredible people. That's their strongest event. And sometimes, like, if you're starting off near them or they're just maybe a second behind you and they breeze by you, there would be more of like, don't go with them. You can maybe hopefully catch them in the shoot and then go on again, because sometimes, like, I think definitely when I was younger, I was like, stay with them, but then you end up kind of killing yourself before you even start the race. So I think that's the only difference. But as you get better at running and better at the event, less and less people are like that. I think it's an unusual event because there's so much going on around you. But in the end, you have to really just focus on yourself, especially when you come into shooting. There could be 30 other people on the range at the same time, all trying to get out. And you have to be really focused on yourself, because otherwise you're just distracted by everyone else and thinking, oh, they're gone out behind me, I've just lost a place, or oh, if I get this shot, I'll get up 5 places. So you can be very, very focused on yourself when you go in, and that's easier said than done, I think.
How much running can you afford to do independent of shooting?
You mean in terms of training wise?
In terms of training, yeah. When you say you're getting better at the run, are you doing that just purely running, or are you still doing even just the stopping for a moment just to have that mental trigger that this is obviously a vital part of the run on event day?
So I would generally do around five or 6 runs a week, and I would shoot about 4 times statically, it's called, so just on its own, and then I might do a combined as well. So put the combined in with the running, and then as we get closer to competitions and things like that, I'll do harder combines, so I'm more tired and more fatigued. But at the moment, I'm kind of just trying to do the combines easier so that I get much better technique and get used to it, and then I'll throw some harder ones in to kind of, I suppose, just get used to the kind of difficulties of it.
It sounds like it's all going relatively well, given that you have the comfort of having already qualified. It's obviously a waiting game for you now, primarily.
Yeah, like it is. It was tough, definitely in the winter. I think the hardest point was probably July last year or so. And you're thinking, like, there's more than a year to go until the games. And that to me was really hard to get my head around, because, you know, it's just such a long time of preparing for it. And then to figure out, oh, wait, we've got another year and a bit to go. And it was still so unknown then of what it would even happen. I think that was really tough for me. And I think a lot of athletes have probably gone through the same. You go through a lot of period of unmotivation, just kind of thinking, like, is it actually going to happen? Am I putting all this training in for nothing? But I feel like we've kind of got to the home straight now that the games are on the horizon. So if they could redo that survey, that would be great, because that was a bit of an annoyance. But I think now that it's on the kind of home straight and I can see it now, it's much easier to kind of get motivated day by day. But it's still tough, especially with, you know, everything that's going on at the moment. It's so unknown week to week. 100%.
Natalya, it's always great to talk to you. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Thanks, Lynn.
Best of luck.
Bye.
Natalya Coyle there, Irish modern pentathlete, talking to us about her preparation and the countdown, hopefully, to Tokyo 2021 is going to be now. It's 9:06 here this morning on OTB AM.